Buddhi Jukshin Metok Chong Rira Vinci Nende Gempati Sange Shindu Vite Ovargi Jokunanda Shima Chapasho Guru Anamada Kamyatayam Sangi Chidam Saki Chidam Janju Vardu Dakni Yapsuchi Dagi Chushingi Pe Sanamki Jola Penchir Sangi Juparsho Sangi Chidam Saki Chidam Janju Vardu Dakni Yapsuchi Dagi Chushingi Pe Sanamki Jola Penchir Sangi Juparsho Sangi Chidam Saki Chidam Janju Vardu Dakni Kyatsuchi Dagi Chushingi Pe Sanamki Jola Penchir Sangi Juparsho. So did any of you have a chance to look at the correlations, to look at that are presented, the karmic causes and the results and their antidotes in Crown of Nice?
You started.
You started.
It wasn't easy because they're this way. Like I wanted 2 computers and have them next to each other.
You can just rotate it, and each page individually you can rotate them. Or I can on my computer. But, so in preview, so you should be able to do that too, under tools or something. Okay, so we will not then do the meditation from last class because you need to be thinking about a problem and what its cause is and what its antidote is. So let's just take a moment as we shift from having our break to class, and we can take this opportunity to set our motivation again and to generate bodhicitta, to think of all beings and our love and compassion and how we want everybody to find happiness and to be free from suffering. Even though we said it in our prayers, let's just take a few moments to meditate on that. And coming back. A few long breaths, long exhales. Check and make sure you're comfortable. When you're ready, open your eyes. And we're going to start a new class, the last class of the 15 courses, ACI 15. And it's what did the Buddha really mean as the subject of this course. And of course, it has something to do with emptiness. So we're still on the same subject, but from a different angle again. So say Zhang-ne. Zhang-ne. Zhang means figurative, and ne means literal. So the name of the book that we'll be studying is called Zhang-ne Lekshe Ningpo. Say Zhang-ne Lekshe Ningpo. Figurative, literal. Lekshe is well-spoken, and Ningpo is the essence. So if we were to put it in English, it would be the essence of eloquence. When something is well-spoken, when someone speaks eloquently, right? So it's the essence of eloquence. Who wrote it? Gyelse Kappa. His dates are 1357 to 1419. And there were only two sutras that Gyelse Kappa, two sutras of Lord Buddha's, that Gyelse Kappa ever commented on. It's also commented on by early teachers. And those two are, say, Dode Gongja. Dode Gongja. And this is a commentary on the true intent of the sutras. This is the primary source of the mind-only school. And sutra here means a brief sermon or a brief talk by Lord Buddha. And this book is his commentary, Gyelse Kappa's commentary on, or this Lord Buddha's commentary on his own sutras. So this is a sutra where Lord Buddha answered the Bodhisattva's question about the contradictions between the first turning and the second turning of the wheel. The second sutra is Sepakpa, Loju, Nisepe, Shupe Do. Do means sutra, by the way. Pakpa, what's a Pakpa? An Arya, a realized being. Pakpa, yeah. So the sutra requested by the Arya named Never-Ending Wisdom, Nisepe Shupe. The sutra requested by the Arya named Never-Ending Wisdom. And this is the source for the Middle Way School's explanation of when Lord Buddha was speaking literally and figuratively. So what was Never-Ending Wisdom's question? In the third part of Lord Buddha's life, and during the third turning of the wheel, and this is in the 10th chapter of the Sutra of True Intent, a bodhisattva named Dundam Yandak says, he comes up to Lord Buddha, he drops his sand, he's kneeling down, he says, Lord Buddha, In the first turning of the wheel, you taught 7 great subjects, like the 5 heaps, the 4 Arya truths, the 8-fold Arya path, the 18 parts of a human being, the 12 doors of senses, and all these beautiful ways of looking at the world. And you always said that these things existed from their own side, that they had some nature or reality of their own. Then, on Vulture's Peak, you started saying that nothing exists from its own side. Nothing has any nature. Nothing has any definition from its own side. The things around you don't exist the way you think they do. So, with all due respect, what did you really mean? We know that you are infallible. Infallible. You know the word? Okay. So please tell me which statement is true. Or do some things exist by definition, meaning self-existently, and some things don't exist by definition? It's a really good question, right? Because Lord Buddha contradicted himself in those 2 turnings. So Lord Buddha responds by making fine distinctions about things, explaining that some things do have a nature of their own, and some things don't have a nature of its own. So now he said 3 things. He said, not everything has a nature of its own. Nothing has any nature of its own, and then kind of in between, some things do and some things don't. Why is this important? It is extremely important subject in every religion. It maybe is the most important question because we need to know when the founder of that philosophy was speaking literally and when they were speaking figuratively. So take, for instance, one of the most famous statements of Lord Buddha. He said, kill your mother and father. Now, if we took that literally, do you think that's what Lord Buddha is saying, is go and kill your mother and your father? No, it's figurative. And we'll talk a little bit later. Different schools understand literal and figurative as different things. So this is going to there's going to be a lot of different threads with this. What it means is if you're not able to practice well at home, then you should leave your family and go to a place where you can practice well. That doesn't mean to totally disregard your family. It doesn't mean to give up on them. It in fact means to get strong. Go somewhere where you can get strong so you can help your family. So if we didn't practice Changde, trying to figure out what's literal and what's figurative, people would go around saying, oh, Lord Buddha told me to kill my parents. And this is one of the 5 immediate bad deeds. So it's a really beautiful subject of how to determine what is figurative and what is literal. We can take everything that we've talked about this weekend and last weekend. Was it figurative or was it literal? What do I take up and what do I give up? What do I believe? What do I not believe? So when did Lord Buddha mean what he said and when did he not? And who gets to decide? A founder or a prophet of a philosophy or a religion, their words can be taken in any way to support whatever kind of behavior you want to be involved in. Because that's the way we are as humans. We want to have some higher power say, it's okay for you to do that. It's okay for you to blow up a temple. It's okay for you not to feed the poor. Right? So there's this wonderful story about Benjamin Franklin, who was one of the founding fathers of this country. He kept a book, like a 6 times book. And he really wanted to stop eating meat. He wanted to become a vegetarian. And he went on a trip to England. And off Newfoundland, the winds died, the ship got becalmed, they couldn't go anywhere, and people didn't know what to do. So they started fishing. Also, basically, Ben Franklin was a glutton. He loved eating. And so here he is sitting on the ship, on the deck, watching everybody fish, and he's like really trying his hardest to not desire the fish. But when the fish are caught and they clean them and then they start cooking them on deck, he's getting hungrier and hungrier, and he begins to salivate. But he's decided to be a vegetarian. And he sees, in fact, as they're cutting the fish open, the big fish, that there are little fish inside. So he thinks, well, if the big fish eat the little fish and I'm bigger than the big fish, then I can eat the big fish. So he broke his resolve and he feasted. And when he was stuffed and thought about what he had realized, that it was just his desire driving him to want to eat the big fish. To misuse those fish for himself. He said it was like bending lead rods any way you wanted to, when you wanted to. So this is human tendency, to bend things to fit what we want, to bend the Dharma for our own personal desires. And your personal mental affliction, defending it. Well, it's okay if I got angry at him because blah, 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 right? I think you know what I mean. And we say, well, the scripture said it was okay. Lord Buddha said it was okay. My Lama said it was okay. We make some excuse to carry on with our harmful behavior. So that's why we have to study Trangme. It's important so that we can learn what the Buddha really meant in each case. So in the monastery, they spend 12 years studying the perfection of wisdom and 4 years of Madhyamika. And in between, they study Trangme for 6 months every year. In this book, the first half is devoted to the ideas of the mind-only school. These are ancient schools of India. And the second half to the middle way school. Lama Tsongkhapa presents an argument between the mind-only school and the two halves of the middle way school on what the Buddha really meant. What do you think they'd be arguing about? The Lord Buddha said.
Emptiness.
Emptiness. Yeah. How things exist. The fact that things have no nature of their own. But the Lord Buddha said they do have a nature of their own. And then he said, some things have a nature of their own and some things don't have a nature of their own. Lord Buddha taught emptiness in 6 different ways. And 5 of them are wrong. Why would he do that?
For his audience.
For his audience. Yeah. And who's to say which is the right way? And how do we know which is the right way? For whom? Ale just said it, for us, right? So when he taught the mind-only version of emptiness, he criticized the middle way version of emptiness. And who taught it? He did. He says when teaching the mind-only way, you know, I was wrong when I taught the middle way version of this, of emptiness. Now, I'm telling you the truth. I was just kidding. That kind of emptiness, that middle way kind of emptiness, it's like really crazy. It's destructive. And it isn't that complicated. So we taught it in a much easier form. This is what he said. So the ultimate version in the middle way, it's accepted by the tantric schools. It in fact is the basis of the tantric schools. And when Lord Buddha taught the mind-only school, not only did he teach it differently, in the middle of his explanation, he says it was wrong and I didn't mean it. The middle ways, right? And later he said the opposite. You know, I did mean it. So, Trangme, why do we study Trangme? To learn the true meaning of the big E, emptiness. And Lord Buddha taught it differently in each of the 3 turnings of the wheel. So, you know, what does that tell you about the rules of interpreting Lord Buddha? Can you take his own statements on interpretation to be literal? It's a problem, because he contradicts himself. I did mean it. I didn't mean it. It gets difficult. So when Lord Buddha discusses how to judge him or not, can you take him seriously? When Lord Buddha sets forth his opinion on what he wanted us to take literally and figuratively, was he being figurative? He didn't even mean that, he says. So Jason Kappa, in his opening lines of his book, says, you know what? We got a problem here. We are trying to figure out what the Buddha really meant and what he didn't mean. And when he told us what he really meant, he wasn't really meaning it. Now what do? You're stuck, right? You can't say what Lord Buddha said. You can't trust what Lord Buddha said when he said, that's what I really meant. And all the other times, that's not what I meant. Because in the 3rd turning of the wheel, when he was teaching mind only, he contradicted the first 2 turnings of the wheel. So what does it mean to be figurative and literal? There are 3 meanings of figurative versus literal. The first one is expressions. Words can express either the literal intended meaning or the figurative of the speaker. Right? If they are speaking literally, then the words and the intended meaning match each other. The words that you hear and the meaning fit together. If speaking figuratively, the words don't correspond to the real meaning, like kill your mother and father. From the first turning of the wheel, the Dharma, Lord Buddha said, all the things around you that you see exist from their own side with their very own nature. Then a few years later, up on Vulture's Peak, he said, actually, nothing has its own nature. Nothing exists from its own side with any quality of its own. Then, in the 3rd turning of the wheel, he said something that contradicted both of these earlier statements. So, in 2 of these cases, he must have been speaking figuratively, and not literally. So most of this course is going to focus on the expressions of Lord Buddha and whether they should be taken literally or figuratively. The second meaning is reality. Does the way the object appear to us and the way it really is match each other? So we're talking about reality, what we're seeing, what we're experiencing. The object appears the way it exists, ultimately. So that would be the object is appearing to us as something projected by us, forced on us by our karma. That's the ultimate reality. So does the object appear the way it exists to you? Figurative, the object is lying to you. It's deceptive reality. It's appearing in a way that is different from the way it really is. This is the illusion that is all around us all the time. We are being deceived. We are the deceived ones. And the third one is understanding. And this is referring to two states of mind. The first one is a valid perception, or ansema, in Sanskrit pramana. It's roughly a correct or accurate perception. For example, seeing 5 fingers on a normal hand. Right? Virtually, all of our perceptions are valid perceptions. So valid perceptions are on the level of literal perceptions. And the other kind of state of mind, the other state of mind is approximate understanding. Say yichu.
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 And this is on the figurative level, meaning that your understanding only roughly matches how things are. In the direct perception of emptiness, your perception and reality match. In the beginning, our perceptions and our reality are figurative because they don't match. And as we work with logic and thinking about emptiness, we gradually approximate emptiness. And it's helpful because it's moving us up the ladder and it's getting more literal. Gyelse says this is earth-shaking, that you can't even trust the word of Lord Buddha when he says, that is what I really meant, because he didn't really mean it. What do you have to trust? Logic, your own reasoning, your own logic. We have the most important Buddhist who ever lived, Gyelse saying, you can't trust the Buddha's words. You trust what is logical to you. It has to make sense to you. What makes sense to a normal person is more important than what an enlightened being says he means. It's pretty heavy. Right? And you know what? Lord Buddha was adamant about this as well. Lord Buddha is saying, I'm going to give you 3 steps for testing something to be true. And if you can't prove it that way, then don't take what I say to be true. So it's really one of the most, attractive things about Buddhism, that you don't have to follow something just because somebody said it 2,500 years ago. And in fact, they said, don't take what I say just because I am who I am. Check it out for yourself. Check it out for yourself. And probably most of us are here because any philosophy that we met in the past, whatever ideas we grew up with, whether it was religious or cultural, in school, we've applied certain tests. We've applied our logic to them. And we found that they didn't quite answer our questions, that they didn't give us what we needed. We found something lacking in them. So we're already practitioners of Changde. You didn't just take the authority of the church or the temple or your teacher or your parents who said it is like that and just accept it as the truth. You questioned it. Is it true? Does it work that way? So Lord Buddha says, here are the 3 tests, which we can use when we're examining an idea or philosophy, somebody's authoritative word, a teaching, an opinion. Any of these things we can use it for, not just for what Lord Buddha said. And if they don't hold up to these 3 tests, throw them out. And they use the analogy in the scriptures of someone buying a piece of gold. So, if you're trading in gold, sometimes you might be trading in sheep or goats or yaks or whatever, but if you're trading in gold, you really want to know if it's pure, that it's not just some other metal covered in gold. You want to be sure that you're getting your money's worth, that your yak that you're trading for the gold is equal to the worth of your yak. So there's some things you have to do to figure out if it's pure gold or not. And so people, and I don't know how to check it, but people who used to deal in gold and silver would know very well how to check it. So the first thing you do is you melt it to see if it melts correctly. And then when it cools, you cut it to see what's inside of it. Like maybe there might be some lead or some other kind of metal. Maybe you don't do them quite in this order. This is how they came to be. And then you rub it or file it. You use a certain kind of file, which they still use, according to our jeweler Lama. And it tells you how many carats it is, how pure it is, how much gold is in it. And Lord Buddha, so he's using this analogy. He says, use these 3 tests on what I teach you. And if it doesn't pass the test, don't follow. So what is melting it? Does it match my personal experience? Logical perceptions. The classical example of this is suffering. If every event is connected to your suffering, to everyone's suffering, what does it mean to be alive if you can't do something about it? Why try to be here if it's obvious that nothing ever works forever? And nothing ever survives, including yourself. It doesn't make sense that people should die and suffer if there was someone who made them and was compassionate. Are you willing to accept that? Does it pass what I'm seeing in my own life? Compare it to your own accurate experience. Are people suffering? Are beings suffering? So that's the burning part, the melting part. Cutting it. Does it fit my deductive, accurate perceptions? Deductive meaning when I take it apart, when I take my perceptions apart, are they accurate? Let's see what a synonym for deductive is. Rational. As we talked about before, there are some things that we can't see, but we can figure them out, right? With our intellect, with our minds, with our logic. The things that I have figured out, does that match what Lord Buddha said? Back to the first one, his description of suffering, does that match my experience of the world? I haven't seen my own death yet. And I haven't lost all my possessions yet. But based on what I've seen around me, I can deduce that that is where I'm going to, okay? And everyone else in this realm, because that's what happens around me. Even to the tiniest little beings, not just humans. We can watch, the insects who are numerous here in the desert, how quickly they come to life and how quickly they go out of life. And Lord Buddha says, you yourself are going to die. Can I see that directly now? No. But I can infer it. I can deduce it by everyone around me. Does it make sense? Yeah, based on deduction, it appears to be true to me. Does it make sense to do a death meditation? So it not only fits my own experience of it, but it also fits my deduction of what is going to happen. Even with things like I don't fully understand, like emptiness, or the deep workings of karma. We can make some sense out of it. So the third test, to rub it, to file it, is it authoritative? Do you know that word? Authoritative, like someone gets up and says something to you and you take their word because they know, you believe they know more than you do. So someone gets up, they say something, you are not sure about what they say, but you've known them long enough that you trust that person, that you have seen that they have never lied to you. And so you would trust what they are telling you to be true, even if you are not sure about it yourself. Especially on a subject of something which you can't see directly. You believe them because you trust the source. We're not able to check it out ourselves through our own experience yet, or logically yet, but because we have trust in that person, and you have known them and you've questioned them and you've gone through all the tests. Is this person trustworthy? Can I believe what they are saying? Not just on blind faith, through logic, then I can believe them. So we can rely on someone we can trust, and that passes the third test, the rubbing it, the filing it, whatever. So in Buddhism, can you figure out that what Lord Buddha said was believable? Once you have established that the scripture was spoken by Lord Buddha, then you have to decide if you can believe Lord Buddha or not. Is it important to check it out or not? It could be a life and death situation, right? So how do you test if Lord Buddha is to be believed? Tibetans will tell you that Lord Buddha is a, say, Tseme Kebu. Tseme Kebu. He's one of pramana. He is one who has valid perceptions. And so how do you establish that? One way would be to study a lot of Buddha scriptures. And if it was spoken by Lord Buddha and everyone that I have read that he spoke is believable, then I can believe that one too. That's one way to do it. It'd take a long time. In the scriptures, they say the best way to establish whether Lord Buddha is being credible, whether you can believe what he said, is that he has described suffering correctly. In fact, he's the only person to have ever described to us how much suffering we are experiencing. In the first Arya Truth, he said, everything is suffering. I remember when I first heard this, the first Arya Truth, and I was driving somewhere and it was springtime and there were all these baby calves born. And I thought, oh, aren't they so cute? And then my mind did this shift and it was like, they're gonna die. This beautiful thing that seemed so wonderful then became, yes, it's suffering. It's suffering. Lord Buddha said it's all suffering. Others will tell you it's 50% suffering, or it's 75% suffering, or 10% suffering. But only Lord Buddha said that it is all suffering. The face of a beautiful child is suffering. To be healthy is suffering. To be young is suffering. Smart computers tell you when your battery's low. So it's the only way to establish that Lord Buddha was credible. Why is it that everything we ever love will end? Because they began. Nothing else is necessary. What ruins your life is your birth. Why did my marriage end? Because it began. If it had never begun, I would never have had a marriage to end. So somebody who can describe the condition of life here so clearly, that might be someone I can believe. But what if he contradicts himself? If someone gives a compelling reason that they say what they do to help another, then it is a good reason. So test it with the three to see. Use these three. On things which are kokir, do you remember kokir? Hidden. Go straight to number 2. Does it fit my deductive, accurate, logical perception? It is important to use number 1 to see if the way they explain it is clear to you. Use direct personal experience to come up with no objection so far. Okay. At this point, yes, it matches my own experience. Is there anything which would discount emptiness with your direct personal experience so far? I can't confirm it just now. I haven't had the direct perception of emptiness, but I can't not confirm it either. It's the same thing with future lives. I can't prove that I've had past lives or future lives, but I can't not prove it either. So we have to use our logic and not have lazy doubt. So we asked earlier, and Tahia answered it, why might Lord Buddha teach something that we as Madhyamika Prasangikas would say is wrong? To fit the audience. Many of the beliefs in mind-only school, which technically are incorrect, function to get us thinking more clearly about emptiness and the idea of the world and its beings being projections of our minds. Check out the different schools. Where do you really lie? I mean, we'd all like to say we're Madhyamika Prasangikas, but how do we understand the world at this moment? And how does that help us? Because if we get blasted with an idea or a philosophy that is too much to wrap around our minds around, we may just walk away from something that could be very precious and helpful to us. It's the same when we're debating somebody. We bring them up slowly, slowly. So Lord Buddha, perhaps this is why he taught 3 different ways, because of his different audiences. Some philosophical schools say it's not necessary to study emptiness. They just say all you need to meditate. And Gyelse quotes in the sutra requested by the realized being Rashtrapala, and this is in your reading. Different beings must wander here because they have no knowledge of the ways of emptiness, of peace, and of things that never began. Those with compassion use skillful means and millions of different reasonings to bring them into it. So by implication, Lord Buddha is saying that you must study emptiness and that the Buddhas will guide you. Say tapsul.
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 Skillful means. And there are thousands of different approaches to getting us to understand emptiness. In the 4 great Indian philosophical schools, they describe in literal and figurative differently. So and they say why it's important to distinguish between literal and figurative. There's the detailist or the Abhidharma school, higher knowledge by Bhashika in Sanskrit. The sutrists or the logic school, Sautrantika. The mind-only school, Chittamatra. And the middle way, Madhyamika Svatantrika and Madhyamika Prasangika. The detailists and the sutras are Hinayana, and mind-only and middle way, Madhyamika, are Mahayana. These terms are relating to the depth of understanding of karma and emptiness. So Hinayana here is not related to bodhicitta motivation or the system of a particular place like Thailand or Sri Lanka. The real difference here is between the four schools in how they explain emptiness. The detailists talk about how things lack a nature of stability. Things are changing. It's a good start, right? They're not permanent, they're changing. Sutras talk about the lack of sustainability. Substantiality. Talk about the lack of substantiality to things, meaning that there is no director, rather that things occur because of goodness done in the past. One level up, right? Mind only and middle way talk about how nothing exists on its own, to different degrees. So every being has a different understanding. And if you apply these three yourself to the teachings, it will help you learn. It's all to help us improve our own understanding of emptiness, to help purify our view, and also, of course, to help others. So we can see where we are on the path. How do I interpret the teachings that I receive? As a philosopher, a meditator, under the extreme of mental afflictions? The whole point of practice is how quickly can you apply a worldview to a situation, within the day, hour, minute, as it arrives. We can also use it to gauge where others are at, what their worldview is. So when we're talking with others, we understand, and we are understanding Chandni. We can realize what they're thinking, where it's at, and we can then speak at their level. And the third way is so we can understand how to take what the lamas teach us. Do we take everything our lama says as absolute truth? Do we believe everything they say? So understanding Changme, we won't be confused and take as literal what is intended as figurative. Also, by understanding the mind-only system, we can get very close to ultimate understanding. If Lord Buddha didn't always speak literally when it was helpful to students, we must be careful in judging others. We're back to that again, right? They could be angels, trying to show us something, to teach us something, and it might not be technically correct, but it's to bring a student further along the path. So we might hear something another teacher is teaching in another school or in another group and say something and we're going like, wait a minute, that's not the ultimate definition of emptiness. Might it be helpful to those students? Can we judge? Should we judge this teacher for teaching it? Why doesn't she or he just come out with the ultimate explanation of emptiness? So concerning the commentary on the true intent of the sutra, what did Lord Buddha mean when he said nothing has any nature of its own? When he was answering the Bodhisattva Dundam Yangdapa, he basically said, in the Heart Sutra you said nothing has any nature of its own, and nothing has any characteristics. I have two questions. What is meant by no self-nature? And how is that nothing has any self-nature? So say no,
No,
ni meba.
never.
No, ni meba.
No, never.
It doesn't have its own nature. Seni meba. It doesn't have its own characteristics. The Buddha said, when I taught the Heart Sutra and said nothing has a nature of its own and nothing has characteristics, I meant these three ways of lacking self-nature. So what are these three ways? The first one is Seni, No'o,
No,
ni meba.
never.
Seni, No'o, ni meba. Seni means definitive. No'o is nature, ni is of, and meba means not. So a lack of any definitive nature. The second thing I meant was Sekewa, No'o, ni meba. A lack of any nature of growing. And the third thing I meant was say Dundampa, No'o, ni meba. A lack of any nature of being ultimate. The Bodhisattva heard this and he got chills up his spine. And then he went away and got enlightened. For the rest of us, we had to wait for Arya Sangha and Lama Tsongkhapa and Geshe Thupten Rinchen and Geshe Michael to teach us. Why did he get chills? All existing things can fit into these three categories. In the mind-only school, their cornerstone they have three attributes, which also relate to the three ways of lacking a self-nature. Remember that this is a review, and we're going through this stuff really fast, right? Say kuntak. Kuntak, shenwangs, and nyongdrups. That's what we're going to talk about now, kuntak. Kuntak is a construct, a mental image, something put together. It's how our mind perceives things. It's not part of our mind or part of our mind imagining something. It's the object that the imagining is focused on. The label your mind applies to the object. In the mind-only school, they say you see the label and not the object. You never see the object. You only see your label, what you're labeling on the thing. So it has the attribute of being established through names and terms, Ming De Taxa. Stated negatively, this thing does not exist by definition. Stated positively, this thing is established by names and terms. It's an unchanging thing. For example, democracy. Proof. When you stop thinking about it, it goes out of existence. So you're thinking about democracy and then you think about dinner. Democracy goes out of existence. Where? In your mind. And since it's not in your mind, it doesn't exist, right? The other attribute, there are three. The second one is, say, Shenwang.
Shenwang.
Shenwang. Shen means other, Wang means power. So powered by other, a changing thing, a dependent thing, the thing that lacks any nature of growing without causes and conditions. It comes together based on causes and conditions. Things don't come together just self-existently. They depend on other things. So the changing nature that things have. So anything that grows comes from causes and conditions, right? Nothing that grows doesn't come from causes and conditions. Nothing can change on their own. Right? Third one, say Yongdrup. Yongdrup. Yong is total, drup is existence. Totality, the simple lack of a non-existent self-nature. This is mind-only school's emptiness. The simple lack of a non-existent self-nature. Why is it called totality? Geshe Thupten Rinchen, one of the most amazing philosophers who taught at Sarah and was one of Geshe-le's teachers, said the minute it comes out, the minute something exists, its emptiness exists with it, right? The moment it appears, emptiness is there with it. The moment it goes out of existence, its emptiness goes out of existence. So every object has its own emptiness. In mind-only school, they call it totality, meaning that emptiness covers the totality of all things. Nothing has a nature of being ultimate. And this means two things. One, kuntats, constructs, aren't ultimate because they're created by your mind. Two, shenwangs, changing things, aren't ultimate because they come together based on causes and conditions. When those causes and conditions change, it goes out of existence. Hang in there. Shenwangs and Yongdrups do exist by definition, from their own side, according to mind-only school. For the Shenwangs, the things exist independent of our thinking of them. If we all stop thinking about something, they say it would still exist. If we leave the room, this pen on the table still exists. Remember which hat you've got on, mine only. Right? Yongdru is the fact that the kunta, the mental construct, does not apply to the shenwang, the changing thing by definition. I'll say it again. The Yongdrup is the fact that the mental construct does not apply to the changing thing by definition. There's no correct way to interpret anything. Yongdrup exists by definition because it is necessarily the case that the label does not apply to the changing thing by definition. And this is true whether we realize it or not, according to mind-only school. Kuntats do exist by definition. it does go away when we stop imagining it. It's not there. And that's what I meant when I said nothing has any nature of its own. So an example would be, a kuntak is like a sky flower, a flower that grows in the air. It's an imaginary thing. It doesn't exist by definition, uniquely from its own side. A shenmo, a dependent thing, is like an illusion, a magic show. Take, for instance, it doesn't appear to us that a pot and our perception of a pot are of the same substance. It appears to come from a separate karmic seed from our perception. We think the pot is out there, but the object in the eye, the sense consciousness, right, perceiving it come from the same karmic seed. So it's this movement. There's one karmic seed, and the pot, and our karmic seed of our perception, it all comes from the same karmic seed, the pot and our perception. The classical example of totality is empty space. The simple lack of physical matter, in the sense of being the simple lack of a non-existent self nature. Literally, Yongju means everything exists. And it means that the minute an object exists, it's 100% empty. So in the mind-only school, every existing thing has these three attributes, Shenwangs and Yongjus. So let's do a quick review of the three turnings of the wheel, since we've been talking about what Lord Buddha taught. So in the first turning of the wheel, the name of it is the turning of the wheel of the four truths. Denshi Chungkor. It was taught in Sarnath, near Varanasi. And it was for those disciples of the lower way, Nyentu Tekpa. The basic subject matter were the four realized truths, or the four Arya truths. Say Pakpe, Dempa, Shi. Pakpe, Dempa, Shi. And there, the view there is every existing thing exists by definition. Turning of the wheel of Dharma, the turning of the wheel on how nothing exists by definition, was taught at Vulture's Peak in Rajgirha. And it was taught to those disciples of the Greater Way, of the Tekchen. And its basic subject matter was emptiness. Ni, Tumpani. And its view was that no existing thing exists by definition. So that's the first two turnings of the wheel. What was the first one? What was the view? Every existing thing exists by definition. The second one is nothing exists by definition. Third turning of the wheel, which was name was the turning of the wheel of fine distinctions. After Lord Buddha was asked, he made fine distinctions, remember? It's called Lekche Chungkor. Lekche Chungkor. And it was taught at a place called Vaishali, or Yangpachen in Tibetan. And it was for disciples of all ways. Tekpa Tongche. And the basic subject matter was the three attributes, Tsenitsun. And here the view was some things exist by definition and some do not. And we must make fine distinctions between them. So which of the three turnings does the mind-only school think is figurative and which is literal? Which of the three turnings, the first turning, the second turning, and the third turning, does the mind-only school think is figurative and which is literal? They say the first two are figurative and the last one is literal. Nicole, am I going too fast for you?
Yeah, it's okay. I've never taken this class, so I don't know any of this stuff.
Because it's neither true that all things exist by definition, nor that nothing exists by definition. Some are one and some are the other. The only literal teaching is the one, the third turning of the wheel, where Lord Buddha made these distinctions. Mind only had it, okay? The mind only school does believe in external objects. That the pen is coming only from the mind. Mind only school says that things do exist from their own side with some unique identity of their own. And this is mainly referring to the fact that because the pen exists as a dependent object that is produced by causes, that it exists externally. Therefore, the external object that is produced must also exist out there, not merely as a nominal thing, but as a true object. If the pen is something that you're only projecting with your mental constructs, then you don't need a pen factory to make it. You don't need plastic. You don't need petroleum to make the plastic, which is not the case according to Mind Only School. That there are external causes producing the pen. According to the Majjhimika Prasangika, the first and the last are figurative. They're not to be taken on face value. The middle one is literal because it is true that nothing exists by definition. That's how it's stated in the middle one, right? And it's not true that everything exists by definition, as stated in the first one. Or that some things do and some things don't, as stated in the last one. So remember that in this school, Majjhimika Prasangika, literal means any teaching that Lord Buddha referred to clearly to emptiness. That's their definition of literal. And figurative means any teaching in which he did not clearly refer to emptiness. So, what then would determine which school a person of the Hinayana or the Mahayana belongs to? It would be your personal understanding or view of emptiness. Also, which school explains your understanding of emptiness the best? So, do they belong to the lower school, the Abhidharma and the Sutras, or the Mind Only, or the Madhyamika? It depends on your understanding of emptiness and which school explains that emptiness to you most clearly. So you can go back and look at the different schools, which I'm pulling up right now. And where, where is it? Where do we lay, right? The details in the sutras talk about how things lack a nature of stability. Changing. Do we have that understanding that things are changing? Yes? No? Yes. Is that emptiness? That things are changing?
My ultimate understanding.
It's not your ultimate understanding. Understanding that is helpful, right? That things are changing moment to moment. The sutras talk about a lack of substantiality to things, meaning that there's no director. Like, will I always have control over my body and my speech? Do I have control over my speech now? I don't know. It is forced on us by our karma. So the sutras say that things occur because of what we've done in the past. Is that emptiness? No. Is it helpful? Yes. Mind Only and Middle Way School talk about nothing exists on its own in differing degrees. And we went through Mind Only and it talking about its 3 different attributes, right? All of a sudden, I can't think of the first one. The Kuntak, the Shenwang, and the Yongju, right? How things have those attributes. And then Mind Only, they go, that's all complicated. Things just lack self-existence. Does it help to think about my perception and the object out there coming from one seed? It's getting a little closer to, it's all my projection. It's getting closer. So all of these, Lord Buddha taught all of them. What can we believe of Lord Buddha? Now that we've been through all of this tonight, for the last hour and a half, can we believe what Lord Buddha said in all 3 turnings?
If you look at it as a progression, like a mental progression.
If you look at it as mental progression, if you look at it as skillful needs, tapsu, then we can see how what he said may not have been the ultimate understanding. It is, in fact, an understanding that is helpful to bring people to the ultimate understanding.
To bring people to what?
The ultimate understanding, which takes us, I'm just going to say it again, takes us back to what Lord Buddha said, which is, you cannot judge another if you are not someone like me, because you will surely. We get to end class early and go home and have an early evening. Scroll back down to our meditation. That was a lot, and a lot to digest at once. And sorry if I rushed through it. I wasn't sure we were going to have time to get through it all, because it is a lot. So thank you for bearing with me. Any questions? Probably not until you look at your notes and look at it and chew on it a bit. And then, we could get together if we want and do Skype calls and have debates and questions about it, and what we understand and what we don't understand. So I put that out there if you want to do that.
Yeah, the main confusing part to me was the totality part. I didn't have a chance to really understand what that was all about. The mental image part, that makes sense. Changing things, we've heard that before, but what is this?
The totality, what it came down to in my understanding, is that everything has emptiness, and so that's the totality of everything.
And that's their definition of emptiness also.
I went so fast I don't even remember. Let me go. Shall I go back? Let's have a look. Let's go back to totality.
That was the one you said, as soon as a thing appears, it has 100% emptiness.
Totality, the simple lack of a non-existent self-nature. Meaning that emptiness covers the totality of all things. This is mind-only school's definition of emptiness. Yes. And that's when we then went into Kuntaks and Shenwangs and Yongdrups. Oh, we did that before, but nothing has a nature of being ultimate in the mind-only school. Meant these two things, Kuntaks and Shenwangs, and then we talked about that. It's something that we can't just get, I think, in one evening. Something we have to look at and study course 15. So totality, mind-only school's emptiness is totality, the simple lack of a non-existent self-nature. And it's called totality because emptiness covers the totality of all things. Meaning that everything has emptiness, I believe, is what that is saying. Not that it covers it, like a blanket or something.
And you had said Shenwangs and Yongdrups do exist. Something I missed, like they do exist from their own side, maybe? Just right after this thing you just said, you had said something about like Kuntaks are not ultimate, Shenwangs are not ultimate, but then Shenwangs and Yongdrups do exist.
By definition. From their own side.
Interesting.
Shenwangs aren't ultimate because they come together from causes and conditions. Kuntaks aren't ultimate because they're created by our minds. Yet, Shenwangs and Yongdrups do exist by definition from their own side. Shenwangs, the thing exists independent of our thinking of them. Like if we left the room, which is what we believe, right? And we leave the room and we believe the pen is going to be where I left it. I know full well that I go looking for things where I know I left them and I expect them to be there and they aren't. And it's like, who moved that thing? I left it there, right? So I'm right there in the mind-only school at that point, because I expect it to be there. And Yongju is the fact that the kunta, the mental construct, does not apply to the Shenwang Bai definition. Sure.
How it's like emptiness.
Yeah.
It's emptiness because it is a fact that the mental image doesn't apply to the actual thing.
The actual thing.
The actual thing they think exists.
Exists
like pen,
out there.
Pen exists, but
Right.
the mental image doesn't apply to it by definition. And that's their version of emptiness.
And we never see that thing that's out there. We only see our mental image. So, down to the meditation. 15 minutes a day examining concepts of Buddhism or actions of lamas and the like with which you have trouble, to decide whether they are to be taken literally or figuratively, and whether they may have some benefit in the way that the lower school's versions of selflessness or emptiness do. Are we farsighted enough to see that they might have some benefit in the long run? All I can say is, I don't know. I don't know, that didn't look like a good thing to me, but in the long run, do I really know? Do I know all the consequences and how this is going to play out? And what the purpose of it might be? It's not to make an excuse for it, right? It's to admit to myself that I judge all the time and I haven't a clue, really. And I have to use my own judgment. It's quite a balancing act. It's quite a balancing act. To keep pure worldview and act in the world in a healthy, constructive way. Okay. May we gain great wisdom. Does anybody have a particular dedication they'd like to do tonight?
Maybe to understand, clear up misunderstandings between different groups that think judge each other.
To clear up misunderstandings between different groups
That judge each
that
other.
judge each other.
You might think that your group has the right answer, their group has the wrong answer, but maybe you're not as right as you think.
Okay, Nicole.
Sashi
Buki Jukshin Veto Drum Riram Binchin and Genpadi Sange Shindu Mikte Wargi Drokun Nandak Shingma Chiparshu Idangur Ratnamadala Kamir Yatayani Gewati Kewoku Sunam Yeshe Sotsoshi Sunam Yeshe Mejuwe Dampar Kuni Toparsho. Thank you.